I've often said that active duty cases are one of the worst investments you can make, yet we can look at them right now and all of them are up quite significantly in the past month, some of them almost 50%. Now looking at unboxing numbers, we can see they're not alone. Unboxing numbers themselves are up about 25% from the average we saw about a month and two ago. Now with that being said, I still think they are a bad investment, but there's a lot of things I want to break down in this video about the general market, and active duty cases are definitely one of the most volatile assets we're planning to talk about. SkinSwap is today's sponsor, and they're also sponsoring you with a free bonus for signing up with the first link in the description. They're the premier place for CSGO and Rust skins with a massive trading site and a top-of-the-line marketplace, offering you the most competitive rates out there and a massive 40% bonus when you're using that link in the description. Combine that with their top-of-the-line selling feature with many payout options and their trading feature legitimately taking you just about a minute, and there's no reason not to sign up with that first link in the description. Now excluding those active duty cases, we've seen a pretty massive amount of growth for especially those rare cases. A lot of them are up potentially 33%, which is still relatively comparable to the amount of growth we've seen for the active duty cases. A lot of rare cases are in very advantageous positions, and I keep on repeating this because it keeps on improving. Not only did we not see any pullback, at least in the short term here, from that major growth spurt we saw because of the release of CS2, but we've also seen the unboxing numbers pick up for these ones too. We mentioned unboxing numbers are up 25%. Not all of that is just active duty cases. The rare cases are up a little bit as well, not as much as the active duty cases because those are the ones that a lot of the newer people flock to, but rare cases are still in a very advantageous position, and we can see exactly this when we look at the price graphs for all of these. Not only is it just the cheap ones that are going up, but some of the older ones as well are up potentially 10 to 15%, which is a really strong amount of growth for a case that is potentially 5-6 years old at this point. Now on the flip side of that, I still think you need to be a little bit cautious. Just because we haven't seen any cases pull back at all doesn't mean that all of them are a great investment. I've got my thoughts in this video right here, but basically there's a lot of cases that are not the greatest investment in my opinion long term. A lot of them have artificially been inflated slightly over a longer period of time, and I think there's definitely better options over some, even if you don't think any of them are bad. Therefore, I would definitely suggest you still make sure you're picking out specific cases and looking into specific cases that you want to see, rather than ones that have just gone up. Now, one situation that's also been heating up quite a bit is the Paris situation. That's because we saw that massive peak, and now we're starting to see prices decrease a little bit. Now, this is not too unexpected by anyone's means. If you thought they were just going to increase indefinitely, you haven't been very involved in the Paris scheme. 105-day sale in the market itself for over 5 months. These capsules were definitely going to have a struggle, and the hollows as well. We can see exactly the same trend form with these hollows, which are the ones I mainly like to look at because I think they have the most interest. But you can see a lot of them just really haven't been able to break that first initial peak in terms of price level. This is not unexpected at all, and therefore I would say Paris is definitely in a decent situation just because it hasn't lost all of this growth as well. We got to remember that Antwerp itself was down to potentially 20 cents, 16 cents per capsule on the Steam market, whereas it definitely takes a while to get to that point, but I think Paris is starting off on the very strongest foot it can. Now for me, the big testament for Paris is definitely going to come in the next upcoming week specifically. If we see any major update release, I think Paris is going to be in a world of hurt. This is the most liquid item on the Steam market. Right now it's on the front page. The only thing that's even coming close to it are cases, and cases we know are definitely not the exact same as Paris. Paris is much more liquid, it's much cheaper, there's many more Paris capsules out there, and therefore Paris is definitely going to be tried and tested when we see a major update. Now obviously they're not the same, but do remember that RMR was actually profitable until Operation Riptide came out. Now one area that's been gaining a lot of traction is agents. Now I don't really talk about agents quite often. That's because agents are something that have only been coming along with an operation. However, a lot of people have been starting to see their investment potential with them. We can see that in the past year, a lot of them are up potentially 100 to 150%, which is still a pretty decent increase for something that's not specifically designed to be an investment. Obviously, we know cases and capsules are, but agents and skins are something a little bit different. Now, in my personal opinion, I wouldn't invest into any agents just because the simple fact that there could be an operation. When an operation comes around, these things get absolutely hammered, and the fact that we haven't seen an operation in about 2 years at this point is the reason why so many of these are so expensive. The reason why they're able to sustainably keep on increasing is because the competition in this area is extremely low right now. We haven't seen any new agent skins released in 2 years, which is very important because when an operation does come around and these things are struck with competition, I don't know if they're going to be able to succeed personally speaking, and therefore that's why I wouldn't personally invest into these. Now if you're picking them up as a play skin, that's a completely different story. And speaking of play skins, especially in the shorter term market past month or so, a lot of them are up quite significantly. Now it's definitely because of that CS CS2 release, but I want to point out a very major issue, and that's the fact that the CSGO player count, or the CS2 player count, has actually not gone up since its release. It's actually gone down in the past 30 days, which is a very interesting predicament that you think would be impacting the agent market, the skins market, and the case market, yet we have not seen that at all. That's because even though the player count is important, it's not the only factor that makes up the overall CSGO market. The CSGO market is really brought up by the few amount of people that put tons of money into it and do really dumb things to prop it up, and that's exactly why the player count is not a one-to-one representation of what exactly the market is doing in that current moment, why it's succeeding or why it's going down. Now, another area that's been catching a lot of interest as of recently is Stockholm and Antwerp. Now, I think these are great alternatives. I'm not going to talk about this too long, but the biggest thing I want to point out is that these are already developed investments, and I don't think comparing them to Paris in terms of ROI or the overall growth you're going to see is a great comparison, because we know exactly what Antwerp and Stockholm are going to do in the near future, and I think we all know that they're probably going to be pretty solid moving forward. With that being said, we have seen them increasing, especially in the very short term here, which is not too unexpected, especially considering Paris is starting to see a very small amount of movement. Now, when it feels like the entire market is going up, it's very easy to start picking out investments you probably wouldn't invest into and start looking at them a little bit more because they haven't moved, one of which is souvenir packages. I don't think souvenir packages are a good investment compared to pretty much anything. If we want to compare them to cases, they usually get outperformed significantly by cases. Comparing them to the capsules, they come from their respective majors, unless we're talking about the Dust 2 souvenir package, which is an anomaly I want to take away, that it is not something that commonly reoccurs. It still lost out in the terms of Stockholm, and Antwerp it kind of broke even on some and got outperformed by others. It's not an area where I think you're going to be making a ton of profit, especially for the ones that are all going to be returning for most likely CS2's first major, which is only about 5 months away at this point, and usually souvenir packages drop during every major nonetheless. Now, what does this mean for you? Well, in my honest opinion, we're in a very prosperous time for the market here. Even though we haven't seen the player numbers go up, we're still starting to see the market shift around. We went from a period of stagnation to now a period of growth, and I think this growth is probably going to continue for the near future just because CS2 is only going to get better. This was the rough release, and we can all admit it was a very rough release, but we haven't seen any brand new content yet. We haven't seen players start to flock in. At this point, we've only seen the unboxing actual feature be released, and I don't think that's enough to actually reasonably say this is going to be the end of the growth. I think the growth is probably going to continue for a fair amount of time, but that's just my personal opinion. We could see an operation come along and absolutely crush this growth into the ground, because an operation would decimate a lot of these markets just because they're so liquid at the moment. Now, what should you do today? In my honest opinion, I think if you're still waiting to invest, I wouldn't wait much longer. A lot of these markets are probably not going to be decreasing unless we see an operation, and therefore I think it's probably a smart move for you to hop in unless you truly believe we're going to see an operation very soon. But that's all I got. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.